Welcome to Evil Live, the live media commentary show that answers the question, is Lilith an angel, demon, or sorceress? Subscribe if you're new to the channel because today we are reviewing Revelations of the Dark Mother. This is written by Phil Brucato and Rachelle Udell. The illustrations within are by Rebecca Guay, Vince Locke, and Eric Holtz. Or Hotz. Sorry, dude. It was published by White Wolf Publishing on November 1998, or in November 1998. So, for those of you who may not know, I was not aware of this until this month, literally. Drive-Thru RPG will send an email, like publications will send an email if you've bought a product from them before sometimes. Like I got something from Call of Cthulhu, I get stuff from White Wolf now. So if you've ever purchased anything from them, anything that new comes out or any sales or deals or anything, they'll let you know what's up. That's how I learned about this. They were just letting subscribers know that this existed, one, and that it was available on a print on demand or PDF version or something. I got the PDF version. Now, this is actually a companion, and the only reason why I picked it up is because it's a companion to the Book of Nod. Now, I've already reviewed the Book of Nod on this channel, so definitely go check that out if you're interested in the World of Darkness or, sort of Vampire the Masquerade or, those sort of role-playing games from White Wolf Publishing. This, in the same vein, is a bit of an epic poem. It's broken into 3 primary sections, and it's an alternate perspective of Caine's experience through the eyes of Lilith. So for those of you who may not know, in apocryphal biblical teachings in our real world and in the White Wolf, sort of fictional universe, Lilith was the first wife of Adam, the Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, that Adam. She was the first wife, and she rejected him whole cloth. Why be subservient to a man when you are just as powerful as they are, right? And so she left east toward Eden, or toward Nod, the wilderness, and then God made Eve, right? Well, that's the very stripped down version that the Bible gives you if you've ever read the Bible, which is bananas. And then there's the sort of a little bit more fleshed out version from the Book of Nod from Caine's perspective. The reason why I personally think this is interesting is I've always been into empowered women, meaning like witches, women who sort of take ownership of not just their personal aesthetics, but also their lives, and they don't allow others to define them. I was raised by women as a young man, and I've always been around strong women, and I just prefer it that way. I'm not into subservient people in general, and I'm definitely not into subservient women. I think it's vile, actually. I don't understand it at all. That being said, Lilith is not a subservient woman at all. But I do have to say that this version of her story, which I've never really gotten any depth of at all, only that she was the first wife of Adam, and in the Book of Nod, from Caine's perspective, that she was, of course, the first wife of Adam, but then when he was left Eden and went to Nod, he was sort of taken in by Lilith and taught things. And that's important because ultimately what this book sets up as a sort of a narrative structure for the World of Darkness that they make is the fight between Caine's side, which is the vampires, and Lilith's side, which this didn't actually clarify very much for me. It made some suggestions about mages, or but then there's some of these mages are also vampires, and so I don't know. For me, it was not very clear what the descendants of Lilith are supposed to be. Mortal mages, or I just don't understand. I still don't understand. And I finished the damn book, but ultimately, the followers of Lilith are called the Bahari, and so it's really the Bahari versus Kindred, which are vampires descended from Caine. And he of course had 13 families, 13 clans, and everything. And so I was really curious about why there was a sort of fight between the two. And it doesn't actually really tell you until the second or third act of this book, of this sort of epic poem. And each of these acts are sort of prefaced by one or two different authors that, in world fictional universe, they found this, ancient knowledge and they're sharing it, and it's not supposed to be shared. And that's kind of what the world of darkness is. It's just a world of secrets and stuff. It's fun. Anyway, so there were some revelations that came out of this that I was shocked by, because I, again, had no idea. And because this is a fictional telling of a fictional character, different people are going to have different interpretations. I found this one to be very, very interesting. But before that, I want to talk about these three different books. So it's broken up. Instead of calling it books, they call it circles. So the first circle is called the Book of the Serpent, which recounts Lilith's creation and her trials. And what I found interesting about this is that Lilith was created, but the version of Adam that is presented is really different than any other version of Adam I've ever heard from in Abrahamic myths and in White Wolf's own fictional myths, which is odd. Why you would make Adam this way. And let me just sort of get to it. He's an asshole. He's a straight up dick. So Adam, being one of the two entities that were put onto earth by God, by Yahweh, felt like he should have some... Well, he was the first one, right? So he should have some sort of dominion over everything. And so when Lilith was created for him out of his back, she was equal to him. And Adam did not like that. He needs things to be lesser than. And so since she wouldn't put out, he would go around and fuck all the animals. Yeah. And so she, when he came back and said, look, can we do it? Which is how I've always had sex. I just walk up and like, can we do it? What do you think? She was like, no, you're just fucking animals. Why do I want to have sex with you? You're disgusting. You revolt me. You make me want to throw up. That sort of reaction, which is completely understandable. But why was he fucking animals in the first place? I don't understand it. And so he tries to actively rape her. And she, pushes him off, screams out for God to help. And this is her first trial. God pulls her up into heaven, and he's like, that's kind of Adam. that's what he does. So, you gotta kind of give and take and understand that. And she's like, look, I'm not his slave. I'm not an animal to him. I'm as powerful as him. Why would I ever want to be subservient to something that I'm equally powerful to? And God was like, it's a really good idea. I thought process. I don't know why you would want to. I wouldn't. And she's like, look, I create things just like you create things, so I'm equal to you too. And God was like, well, how about you come here and sit on my lap? For real. And so she sits on his lap, and they have like lap sex for like weeks or months or years or something. I can't remember the exact term, but it was like an extended long time, more than the regular 32 seconds that the rest of us have sex during. So anyway, she's literally fucking God, and he gets pissed because she keeps insisting that she is his equal because she can also create life down on planet Earth. And he's like, you're not my equal. Get off my lap and get the fuck to Earth. Now I'm giving you a tongue-in-cheek version of it. This is, that's sort of an epic poem presentation, and so it's not quite as literal and cheeky as I'm presenting it, but it is as raw as I'm presenting it. And so she gets thrown back down, and of course she's kicked the fuck out of Eden, and God puts down an angel to sort of keep her out. This angel happens to be Lucifer, his favorite angel, the morning star, right? So Lucifer's sitting there with his sword, protecting Eden from Lilith. Meanwhile, Lilith is literally wandering the deserts of the wasted earth because there's no one here. What I really, really loved about this version of this sort of creation myth was that the Garden of Eden was not the first entities to be created on Earth. In fact, Earth had something called the Shining Ones, which it's never very clear what they were. You can sort of assume they were like other angels, maybe. They were other eternal beings with power. They were possibly offspring of God and some other entity. They could be other pagan gods. It's just never really clear what they actually are, though they use angelic names for some of them, which adds to the confusion. So these shining ones, she runs across repeatedly, and they teach her things. So she gets more and more inundated with these ancient knowledge that is separate from the knowledge that God would give her, and separate from the power that Adam would pretend to have given her, even though she's completely equal to him. And so then, of course, God creates Eve, and then Adam finally has a subservient person that he can sort of fucking have kids with. Hence, Cain and Abel. So Lilith ends up going into the ocean and living there for a while, just learning from the shining ones underneath the sea. She has like seeds from other shining ones giving her fruit across all the wasteland of Earth, and she uses the seeds of the fruit that she eats to sort of create life within her and then spew it back out into the sea and create these ancient sea creatures and stuff. Not entirely sure. I'm sure this feeds into their other game books and stuff like that. I'm just ignorant to what those are, and so I don't really know how to frame it. All I know is that she creates other entities, and that's, I don't understand what that means. So maybe if you're familiar with World of Darkness or you're familiar with White Wolf Publishing products, you would know more than I would, what this is. I'm just sort of judging this on the merits of itself. The second circle is called the Book of the Owl, and it retells some events from first circle, from Lilith's perspective, and recounts her meeting with Cain, taking him in to her and Lucifer's garden and teaching him to grow through suffering. So before we get to that second book, Lilith actually goes back to Eden because now that she's sort of created life and she's created all sorts of stuff, she feels like she deserves to go back to Eden and see what's up, see how that whole experiment's working out. She runs into Lucifer, and Lucifer's like, no, you can't come in here. I'm sorry, but the boss man doesn't really want you there. And wow, you're beautiful. And she's like, yeah, I am pretty sexy. You know what? You're not too shabby yourself. And then they hook up. So she's actively fucking Lucifer when he's like the angel Lucifer before he falls. And she's corrupting him the whole time. And so together they leave. He abandons his post. They leave and create their own garden, which is a whole new place, right? This is about the time that Cain and Abel are making their sacrifices to God. Abel's is accepted, Cain's is not. So Cain sacrifices Abel in order to get that acceptance from God. And God is like, no, you get the fuck out of here, dude. You're a murderer. You're tainted. One thing I found very interesting about all of this is even Lilith, when she meets Cain for the first time, doesn't want him necessarily in her garden. She can sense the vile scent of murderer on him. And so everything in this is presented as, if you are a murderer, you are a disgusting entity. You can create, you can live, you can fuck whoever you want, you can do whatever you want, and you're fine. As soon as you kill, that means you're tainted and you're bad, which is strange to me. I mean, you have to eat, right? Kill animals. Is that evil? That's ridiculous. We're omnivores. So I didn't really understand that rationale, but still I accept it because I didn't write it. So Cain ends up going to Nod and finding this garden of Lucifer's and Lilith's, which is the second book of the Book of the Owl. And she basically teaches him how to wield the powers of the earth that she has learned from the Shining Ones. And this is a different version than Cain's version of the Book of Nod. She's much more critical of him, and she doesn't really want to teach him that well, but she can see how weak and pathetic he is, and he needs, if he's going to survive, he needs some tools to survive by, and so she kind of feels obligated because she has the tools to then pass them on. In a very sort of matronly, witchy way, which I really appreciate. So he learns everything he can, and that's when the angels come down and start talking to Cain like, look, God will accept you again if you repent. And he's like, fuck you, I don't repent. I'm not going to apologize for what I did because God wouldn't accept my natural course of sacrifice. And so he gets cursed the 3 times to become the very first vampire. And that's when he sort of leaves leaves Nod for a while and sort of has his own little group of vampire children. And the 13 then come back after Lilith and Lucifer have had their own children in their own garden. As soon as Caine comes back, all but 2 of his clans, including him, murder all of the children of Lilith and Lucifer. Why? I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea. It doesn't really explain his motivations. And in fact, it's completely absent from the entire Book of Nod, and so I have no idea why he murdered them or why he would return to murder them when they're the offspring of the person who taught him how to live. So it doesn't make any sense. But that's the genesis of their fight between the 2 clans, the Bahari and the Kindred. And ultimately, this is when Lilith starts cursing Caine herself. So now God has already cursed him to be a vampire. Now she is cursing him to doom and all of her children to doom, which is the ultimate prophecy about the sort of apocalypse that will happen eventually in the whole world of darkness thing, where Lilith, well, first of all, Caine will rise again, and he will come back and destroy the children who are doing wrong, and then, celebrate the children who are doing right. And then Lilith will come back and destroy them all. So that's sort of their end of times revelations of, prophecy. And the third circle, which is the last one of this book, is called the Book of the Dragon, and it recounts Lilith's declaration of a long night of suffering, particularly upon Caine and his descendants, that will finally end with her return during the end of the world. And so that's really specifying exactly what's going to happen to them as she curses them in different ways, and then how they are all suffering, except for 2 of their version of the clans, because those 2 clans didn't partake in the murdering of her children. So this presents a Lilith that is incredibly powerful. She is owning her own body, which I dig. She literally has fucked God, Adam, and Lucifer on the regular. She kicked Adam out, God kicked her out, and then her and Lucifer, it doesn't really explain at what point he goes up and wars with God, but it does suggest that her engagement with him, like her interaction with him and their time together in their garden, is how his perspective shifted against God rather than being a dutiful angel like all of the others. And that's where ultimately he would then go up and war with God, and the third of the host would be thrown from the gates of heaven. So it's an interesting version of the creation myth. It presents Lilith in a very, very fascinating way. It presents Caine in like a piece of shit. And Adam is a goddamn monster. They're the worst, which sucks because I've always really liked the Caine myth. Like, I really enjoyed the Book of Nod. It's one of my favorites as far as fictional recountings of a fictional recounting are concerned. And just the whole artwork and everything about the Book of Nod, I really, really loved. This I enjoy for the sake of the story, the narrative of Lilith, but the artwork, while it is actually very good, it's not on par, and it's not as dynamic as you find in the Book of Nod, which is a little disappointing because this is actually, I think this is bigger as far as like book size, not physical, but as amount of pages and stuff. I think this is a larger volume, which tells a much more detailed story than the Book of Nod did. And that's why I gave it 4 out of 5 evil eyes, because honestly, the reason why you get these is twofold, these 2 books. It's the artwork and it's the poetry. And it's not really poetry. It's a narrative storytelling device. So don't go into it thinking it's Homer or Dante's Inferno, because it's not. But it is a form of poetry, I suppose. A lot of it's, the prefaces before you get to the epic poetry part is just monologue of the person who found it. And then they present the actual document and stuff. So, whatever. Lilith's great. I give it a 4 for Lilith. It would have been a 5 if the artwork was on par with the Book of Nod. It wasn't. I had to detract it because, again, there's no game mechanics in this. This is just a narrative storytelling device to give you background on war between the Bahari and the Kindred. That's it. That's the whole point of this. And so if you're not going to present that in the best possible light visually, this is a role-playing game. Role-playing games need visuals to accompany them to really invest you into the story. Then I can't give you the 5 that you should have gotten otherwise. So kind of your fault. In either case, that is going to do it. Actually, you know what? Before I close this down, let me do this. So the Bahari are the Lilith-cults. Adam raped Lilith. The preface says to ignore Caine's teaching and live free like Lilith, written by vampire Rachelle Dolium, which is strange because some of the followers, some of the Bahari are vampires, but they're not vampires like Caine's descendant vampires of the 13 clans. So I don't know if that means they were once like them and then they changed their philosophy, like adopting a new religion, for example, or if there's some other sort of physical change. It wasn't really clear. The followers are a hybrid of a mage and a vampire, some of them, and then the other are just mages, but I don't really understand the mage thing because I've never looked into it, so I'm just a little bit confused. I know Lilith wants to overthrow Adam and God. It suggests that she wants to overthrow Lucifer, but I don't understand because it never showed us a point where they've had a falling out. But it does suggest early on that she wants to rise up against Lucifer and Adam and God. So is there something missing from this? Was it not correctly edited? There's questions still. The Shining Ones, again, are they pagan gods? Are they angels? I don't know. They're eternal entities of power, and that's kind of cool. I don't need every answer. I like mystery. Caine and his offspring destroy Lilith and Lucifer's offspring in their garden. I thought that was kind of fucked up, but that's the genesis of the Kindred and Bahari fight. So it is interesting. It's worth reading. Don't go in it for the artwork, because while it is good artwork, it is not as good as Book of Nod. And I stress that so much because the Book of Nod is fucking phenomenal, both in its story and in its art. That's why I bought it, you know. It's great. So anyway, that's going to do it for this review. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate you. Have you ever played World of Darkness games before? Do you know what the Shining Ones are? Or do you know what the Bahari are? And where is it told other than this, you know, sort of narrative book? I'd be interested to find out. That is going to do it for this review. As always, remember the evil spelled backwards is live. So get out there and be evil.